Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to have Miss Tracy speak about the Cooper Anthony Child Advocacy Center, and I'm I'm probably echoing on y'all's end. I'm sorry. Hold on just a second. Okay, so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Um, so a little introduction about Miss Tracy is that she has 14 years of experience with child abuse investigations as a forensic interviewer with the Cooper Anthony Mercy Child Advocacy Center. She conducts legally defensible interviews with children and teens. Tracy has conducted over 6,000 interviews and testified in numerous court cases. She receives ongoing training and peer review at state and national level. In addition to her role as forensic interviewer, she also provides supervision of clinical services for Cooper Anthony Mercy Child Advocacy Center. Tracy is also a state and national trainer. She has been facilitating Child First training in the state of Arkansas several times per year since 2006 and recently took on a contract role, excuse me, um, with Gunderson's National Child Protection Training Center to facilitate Child First training nationally. Tracy is also a certified law enforcement instructor. Tracy is a member of the American Professional Society in Abuse of Children and several multidisciplinary teams in the state. She has been employed with Mercy since 1992. So, Tracy, it is my pleasure to introduce you, and I will just give roles over to you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you very much. And I actually should have updated that a little bit before I got that to you because I've actually taken over as the director about 2 years ago of the center. So I am the director of the Child Advocacy Center now. So thank you for having me. And for those of you joining today, thank you so much for giving some time to hear a little bit about our mission here at Cooper Anthony. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about what our components are, what we provide to the community, and a little bit about our mission, and then I'm going to allow for some questions. And so the Advocacy Center, we are one of 17 in the state of Arkansas. So we are a comprehensive, coordinated response to child abuse. So here at our center, and our main location is here in Hot Springs. We opened our doors in 2003. And at that time, here in Garland County had some of the highest rates of child abuse that were reported in the state. And so child advocacy centers, they arrive in communities to meet the needs of that response to child abuse happening. So that coordinated comprehensive approach is where we work with all of our partner agencies, law enforcement, DHS, state police. We all work together in that comprehensive coordinated approach. So CACs came about, child advocacy centers came about in about the mid 80s. And because at the time, prior to advocacy centers, children, when they would make a disclosure or this would come out and get reported, children would have to be spoken to and interviewed by all the different agencies that have a part of this response, but it wasn't coordinated and the child didn't come first. So CACs, that's why they were designed to put together to put the child first, not the case, not the investigation, not the needs of the different entities that are involved, but the actual child comes first. So here at our main location, we opened our doors in 2003. Mercy took us on as a mission to the community. There is never a fee, never a charge for any of our services. And we see over 700 children a year. And I'll walk through our services that we're able to provide. So we provide that initial forensic interview at the onset of that investigation being accepted at the child abuse hotline, and it gets deemed to have an investigation. That investigative agency who's been assigned, they will contact us and make that referral. And so that could be either by DHS, state police, local law enforcement. At that time, that child will present to the advocacy center along with their guardian, and we'll be able to provide that forensic interview, the advocacy, our forensic medicals, and we have our mental health component as well. And then about 5 years ago, we rolled out our prevention program. And so those are our different components that we provide here at the center. And that forensic interview is the hub of that investigation. When that child comes in for that referral, for that forensic interview, the prosecutor, law enforcement, DHS, they will all respond here. And that's that coordinated approach that I spoke to. And so all the different entities that have a role to play for this investigation, they will all respond to your Child Advocacy Center, and the child will have one interview by a skilled, trained forensic interviewer. Why prosecutor, law enforcement, DHS will be in an observation room and will be able to observe this live interview and be able to garner what all they need for that investigation. And so after that forensic interview, if there is a disclosure or if there is a need for that medical, it all happens under one roof. So our center here in Hot Springs, we opened our door in 2003, and we serve 6 counties. And it got to a point in 2015, we opened a brick and mortar, a satellite in Mena. Polk County is one of our service areas, but it got to a point for those follow-up services, that mental health service, children weren't able to get back and forth. So we opened our first satellite office in Mena. And then 2 years ago, April, we opened our second satellite center there in Benton. So we've always been providing services in Sling County, Polk County, Montgomery County, Hot Springs County, Pike County, and of course, Garland County since we opened our doors. But we're always evolving and looking for ways to ensure that the families and children are being able to access these services that we have. Yes, we can have them, but if the children can't access them, then we're looking at always ways to improve upon that. And it got to a point where many of you know that when the construction was going on 30, that made it difficult as far as time-wise for families to come back and forth from Benton for those follow-up services, especially for that mental health therapy. And so we opened our second satellite April of 2018 in Benton. And so, this is a topic, child abuse is a topic that, oftentimes individuals aren't real knowledgeable about because it's not a topic that's really discussed openly or discussed, right? When you go to a party or you're with your friends or family, it's not a topic really you want to engage in, right? And so sometimes individuals and communities, they're not really aware of what's happening in their community with their children or their neighbors or their loved ones or just friends. And a lot of individuals don't know that we exist or what we're able to provide unless there is a circumstance that lends you to having some knowledge of the center. And then those families and individuals are typically in a crisis mode because there's been a referral, something has been identified or been reported, and now this family is having to have these services. So it's really a great opportunity for me to be able to speak to community members like yourself to say, hey, we're here, this is what we do. And so a lot of individuals, when I go and speak, they're like, Tracy, how do I refer a child there? And at what point would I refer a child? And so I like to educate individuals and let them know if there's ever a time that you observe an interaction between a child and another child, or a child and an adult, and it gives you cause to ponder. You stop and you ponder, is that right? Is this situation okay? So I like to tell individuals, if you ever stop and ponder, that's the time to pick up the phone and call the hotline. And I know that there's people that are like, well, I don't want to get them in trouble, or I don't really know what's really happening, so what could I report? And so here's what I want you to know. The child abuse hotline is manned by Arkansas State Police. They're in Little Rock at the Arkansas State Police headquarters. And so there's Arkansas State Police hotline operators that man that phone call when you're making it. And they know what meets the law. So if you're unsure or you only have a little bit of information, don't let that prohibit you from picking up the phone and calling, because they're going to know whether it's going to be accepted or whether they're just going to document it. And so please always err on the side of caution. One thing I always hate to see is whenever some case makes national news and a neighbor comes forward and says, well, you know what? I knew they had 10 children. I never saw them outside. I always wonder, how come you didn't call about that months ago? Why does it take a horrific case to hit the news for you to speak up? So if you have neighbors and they have multiple children or several children and you never see the child and you never hear the child, that's a little bit concerning. And you can call and have a child welfare check, and it can be nothing more than discovering that that child's been with another parent at another location, and then you sleep better at night knowing that, right? But it could be a situation where it's detrimental to that child who's in that care of that individual, where something is going on that's wrong and can be stopped. And so we are here always to field any phone calls. If you ever encounter a situation or you observe something or something becomes knowledgeable to you and you're not really sure how to handle that information, please always pick up the phone, call us here at the Child Advocacy Center. We're more than happy to field a phone call, walk you through. We have full-time child advocates. Our advocates work with our children and families, not just through the duration of the case, but even long after. Our advocates have that ability. And so I said when I first started, we see over 700 children a year here at our center. But I want you to know that most children never tell. And when you hear the statistics and you know that 1 in 4 girls before their 18th birthday will have some form of maltreatment happening to them, you know those statistics are very, very high. And so if you're around children, if you have children and they have friends, you lead a youth group, you volunteer where there's children, there's going to be a time where there's going to be something you observe, or a child confides in you and discloses to you that you're going to have to manage that disclosure. And so I like to always educate individuals on managing a disclosure, because it's very, very important. What happens on the front end can very well impact what happens on the end of a case. So if you ever have a time where there's a situation where a child does disclose to you, first of all, I want to let you know you should feel very honored that they trusted you, that they would open up and they would trust you with this type of information. And I think that I know the best response initially should be, you know what, thank you so much for trusting me. And then next, don't promise a child anything, because you're not the individual, or we're not the individual who can promise outcomes, right? But we can let that child know, you know what, I will do everything I can to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And that's where you have to feel confident in your knowledge and how to report that. And so you need to call the child abuse hotline. It's a 1-800 number. Call the child abuse hotline, make the report, and you need to give them the child's words. Do not try to summarize. If a child uses verbiage and information that you feel very uncomfortable with, please don't rework that verbiage or those statements, because when a child does, when this case, if it did get investigated and then the child used that terminology that you did not use, it makes the child not look credible. So if you say, hey, I'm here to make a report, little Bobby told me X, Y, and Z, but you put it in your own words, and then the child's question, hey, did you tell Miss Smith this? And this is what she said. And the child says, that's not what I told her. What I told her was this. And so that makes it to where it makes the child not look credible. So managing a disclosure is very, very important. Children, when they feel safe, they tell. When I got into this field in 2005, conducting forensic interviews, I had to learn that Hot Springs Village retirement community all of a sudden really impacted my life on a forensic interview level. And how that happened was, with Hot Springs Village being the largest gated retirement community in the nation, a lot of children go there on spring break and summers to be with grandparents and family, right? So what would happen is, when children felt safe and they were out of their abusive situations, they would disclose. So I would get those referrals. We would see the children when they felt safe. And so it's really, really important to report that as soon as a child gives that information to you. Don't hold on to it. Don't try to investigate and get more knowledge. And please, please, please don't think, you know what, I need to run this by my friends at work. I need to talk to my spouse. I need to run it by the child's guardians. Because did you all know that 90% of children who are abused know their offender? So what that means is it's a high probability, and research tells us that oftentimes children are in homes with their offenders. So if you pick up the phone and you say, I'm going to run this by their guardian, their parent, there's very well a high statistical probability that that child's abuser is within the home. And once that abuser finds out that it's been reported, they can destroy evidence, they can threaten the child, they can harm the child, they can dispose of a child. There's many different things, as you all I'm sure know, that offenders will do to protect getting caught. And we know that victims are the biggest source of evidence, right? And when children are children, they're dependent upon those abusers. And so if their abuser is within the home and you've alerted that abuser, or let's say you've alerted the mother who's protective of the abuser because it's her spouse, boyfriend, then that really puts the child at it once again at a disadvantage. So if a child does disclose or you have knowledge, please report it. And here's the caveat I would like to share with you today, because oftentimes when I speak with school teachers and counselors and law enforcement, and they share their frustration with me, and they let me know, hey, Tracy, I call the hotline all the time when this child comes to school, and they're filthy, and they're not getting adequate rest, and they're not equipped to learn. I know there's environmental factors that I want to be investigated. And whenever I call the hotline, they say they can't accept it. I'm so frustrated. I'm going to quit calling. What I like to educate individuals to is, here's a caveat. If you call the hotline and it doesn't meet the letter of the law to accept it to open investigation, you can hang up and you can call law enforcement. Law enforcement is a 911 agency. Law enforcement does not have to have a hotline report to do an investigation. So law enforcement can take a report from you. They can call us here at the center, make the referral. We can get that child in for services. And we will be able to have someone highly skilled, highly trained as a forensic interviewer. We follow a national protocol in our forensic interview room. And it is the only protocol of interviewing children that's been upheld all the way through the Supreme Court. So these children are afforded best practice, someone highly skilled, highly trained, to be able to give them opportunity that if something is negatively taking place, they have opportunity to speak out about it. I have shared a lot of information. So probably that could have, or maybe has generated some questions for you. So please let me just open it up and say, does anybody have any questions?
Well, Tracy, thank you so much. That was very informative. I hate that you have to have the center. I hate that we live in a world that you have to have that. But with that being said, I'm thankful for people like you who take care of kids. I have 2 small girls myself. So when you gave that statistic of 1 in 4 girls, I did everything I could not to burst into tears because that's terrifying.
Yes.
And just the thought of kids not being loved on is so sad. And I'm going to stop that now before I start crying. So with the center, what are your current needs? What do y'all need from the community? What do you need for these kids? Like, what is the main need aside from advocating for children?
Absolutely. So thank you, because our biggest need is for individuals like yourselves to know that we're here and what we do. Because the biggest thing that I want to see happen is if a child has a need, they're afforded to have what they need, the services made available. All of our services are free. It costs about $2,700 per child to be seen at the Advocacy Center for all of our resources. And that's from start to finish. Because you all know justice is not swift. So if a child comes in, discloses there's an investigation, prosecution's going to move forward judicially. It's a process, right? And so we operate on grants and donations and fundraisers. And what the staff does is we keep track of through the year of all the children that we see that are indigent or may have a need at Christmas time. And right now we have our Christmas project. We have named it Miracle on Macaulay because our office is located here on Macaulay Court. So it's called Miracle on Macaulay. And we have 76 children that we're currently providing Christmas to. And we have determined that we're going to spend $200 per child to give them a Christmas. And so our current need is our Miracle on Macaulay Christmas program for those children. And I forwarded you earlier, Kaylee, our Facebook page where you can access our site if you'll send that out, and you can see more about our Christmas program, as well as my other need is for all of you to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Facebook and just be in tune with what we're providing for the community. And so you know if there's ever a child in need, how we can support them and what we can do.
Thank you so much. We are going to open the floor for anyone else. If you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask any questions that you have as well. All right, so I have another question. If people are wanting to make donations, say to provide the $200 for a child, how would we go about doing that?
You can do that on our Facebook page. You can put it in the mail and mail it to us here at the center. Easiest way is going on the Facebook page.
What is your Facebook page? Would you say the Facebook page?
Yes, I sent that in. Kayleen, did you send that out?
Yes, I will send that out in a follow-up email. But if you go to Facebook, it's the Cooper Anthony Mercy Child Advocacy Center.
Yes.
And it'll be right there. I think it's one of the top things on your page. So I was kind of looking through your Facebook page a little bit to see what all y'all are doing. And I think that was the top thing on your page. All right. And are there any other questions out there?
I want to ask a question. I'm a therapist and I'm wanting to know, how do you have access to the evaluation that was done with a child, like say interviewing with TV and a video made? How do you have access to that? Can you hear me?
I think I can hear you, William. You're asking how do we have access to the child's interview?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Say what again? Say again.
Was your question about how do we have access of the child's interview?
Yeah, how would a therapist get access to that interview?
Oh, okay. How would a therapist? Okay. Well, our forensic interview is happening because of an investigation. And so that investigator is in charge of that case, that investigation. So if there is a therapist that the child is being referred to and going to provide treatment, then that therapist would reach out to that investigator and ask for that information from that interview.
So how would you find out who was the interviewer? How many do you have?
We have 3 forensic interviewers here.
3.
But that forensic interview is protected for the child's for the protection of that case. So a therapist who might be seeing the child after the interview, that's going to be determined if the case has been closed out and what's being provided to that therapist, you know, at that point during that investigation.
Thank you so much for that. Anybody else have any questions?
No, I just want to thank Tracy for a very informative program. I've followed the center since it opened and thought I knew quite a bit about it, and I've learned a lot today. I have not kept up with all the growth and services. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kay. We have grown. We added our probation program about 5 years ago. And I'm happy to report that in 2019, we won the national award for our prevention program right here in Garland County for our efforts. And so we have a body safety program. It's called Empower Me. And we rolled it out and partnered with one of our magnet schools and kicked it off about 5 years ago with Park in kindergarten and first grade. And it was a huge success. And it has just grown where every superintendent, every community that we're located in, all 6 communities, we have grown our prevention program now, kindergarten through 4th grade. And of course, they want us all the way through 12th. And we're trying, it's just manpower, because we do it one classroom to the next. And it's been very successful, the Empower Me Body Safety Program. We have therapists who have at the schools who've said, and the counselors who said, we always wanted to be able to cover that and let children know this, but we never knew how to deliver that information. So we're pretty proud of our prevention body safety program.
Great.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. That's a huge
you.
accomplishment.
If you have an opportunity, please come by. We would love to give you a tour. You can see our center. You can see how we're equipped to be able to do this ministry. And it truly is a ministry to all of us. I've been employed with Mercy for almost 30 years. I'm a transplant from Scottsdale. I worked at Children's Hospital in Arizona, where I'm from. Children are my passion. But this is truly a ministry. For those of us who work here, we're right there with you. We're horrified that we're needed, but we're so grateful that children have us if there's this need.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for taking time out of your busy schedule and informing us about the center. Like it's amazing what you do. So thank you so much for that. And like I said earlier, if anyone would like to give any of those donations to the center, please feel free to do that on the Facebook page or mailing in whatever it is you feel gifted to give. Or feel needed to give, excuse me. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close it out for the day. And I'm going to forward y'all the email that she sent me to the Facebook page, that link, so you can have access to that. And if y'all ever need Tracy, her contact information is on there. So feel free to contact her if you need anything or need any advice on what to do about a situation. So Tracy, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you.